What's up guys, it's me, Daniel, back with another video. Today I finally want to review The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. First of all, I just want to say I really enjoyed this game. It is way better than Breath of the Wild. When the game first came out, I played it non-stop for over a month. But that still doesn't take away from the fact that this game is way too overrated. Now don't get me wrong, the game is fantastic. It's way better than Breath of the Wild, but ever since it came out, people will not stop talking about it. Within days of the game's initial release, there were already dozens of videos explaining why Tears of the Kingdom is the best thing since sliced bread. There were dozens of YouTubers showing off the latest thing that they built in the game. You couldn't escape it. Everybody was talking about this game. It seemed like every 5 minutes someone would be uploading a video about the latest thing that they discovered in Tears of the Kingdom. The game is great, but it's not that amazing. And even if it was, it's just not that big of a deal. When the game first came out, people were talking about it non-stop. People aren't talking about it as much now, but for the first few weeks after it came out, people would not stop talking about it. The game is great, but the open world is exactly the same. And that doesn't necessarily bother me, but you have to admit there's not really much to discover if everything looks almost exactly the way it is in the first game. Now don't get me wrong, the open world is still very different. You can explore the skies of Hyrule, you can explore underneath Hyrule. There are also dozens of caves and wells hidden throughout the game. Honestly, I feel like the idea of having caves throughout Hyrule makes a lot of sense. I'm almost surprised they didn't think of including this idea in the first game. There are lots of secrets to discover, but the areas in the game that look exactly the same are the most bland areas to explore. If Nintendo plans to make another open-world Zelda game anytime soon, they would have to create a different map. They can't just use the same open world 3 times in a row. I just don't think it would work. Just like in the first game, you have to venture to 4 major locations throughout Hyrule in order to progress through the main story. These areas include Zora's Domain, Goron City, Gerudo Town, and Rito Village. These are the exact same locations as the first game. Now, I haven't played every Zelda game ever made, so I'm no expert, but couldn't they have included different locations from the other Zelda games? I can't really think of a good example for a different location. I never played Zelda as a kid, so I don't really know if there are many different locations to choose from. They could just make up a brand new location from scratch, or maybe the next open-world Zelda game shouldn't even take place in Hyrule. Link's Awakening, for example, took place on an unexplored island thousands of miles away from the Kingdom of Hyrule. Maybe that's what the next game should be about. That way the developers would be forced to come up with new locations to explore. As for the new abilities in the game, I don't really have any complaints about them. My favorite new power would have to be the Fuse ability, which enables you to fuse objects to your weapons. I always find this ability very useful. Some of the weapons in the game are very easy to break, but if you fuse your weapon with a giant rock, for example, your weapon will not only be stronger, but it'll be much harder to break. I also really enjoy fusing objects to my bow and arrow. It makes it incredibly easier to defeat giant monsters. My other favorite new power is the Ascent ability. It's much easier to get to higher ground when you use this ability. My least favorite new power would have to be the Recall ability. I just never have any excuses to use this outside of the shrines. Although the recall ability is useful for when you need to get to higher ground, but it's almost the only reason I ever use this power outside of the shrines. It's still a good power, but I just never have a reason to use it that much. One thing I think this game really needs is a wider selection of food. Now don't get me wrong, there is definitely a much wider selection of foods to cook compared to the original game. But I find myself constantly cooking the same foods over and over again. It seems like no matter what combination of ingredients I use, I wind up with simmered fruit, or a mushroom meat skewer again. Now don't get me wrong, the game does have a selection of different ingredients that weren't in the original game, so you don't always get the same result. You can cook several different things using tomatoes, for example. You can cook steamed tomatoes, simmered tomatoes, tomato mushroom stew, but the thing is, I'm still sick and tired of cooking the same things using tomatoes over and over again. I wish they would let you kill chickens in the game. That way I could cook a roast chicken dinner for a change. I know you're not allowed to kill chickens in the Zelda games, but they need to change that rule. I don't care what anyone says. Another thing they have to include is potatoes. That way I can make a roast chicken dinner with all the trimmings. Potatoes, vegetables, gravy, the whole 9 yards. Despite some of my nitpicky arguments, this is still a great game. It deserves a 10 out of 10. If you enjoy open world games, or if you've never played an open world game before and you'd like to give one a try, then this is a good game to start with. I highly recommend it. Until next time, be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more videos.